Let's examine an interesting type of quadratic equation that has a special structure. Here we have the equation x squared minus 9x squared equals 0. Take a moment to observe what makes this equation different. Notice that both terms in this equation contain x squared. This is unusual compared to typical quadratic equations where we normally have different powers of x. The standard form of a quadratic equation is a x squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where we have different powers of the variable x. Our equation doesn't follow this pattern. When both terms contain the same power of x, in this case x squared, we can use a different approach called factoring out the common variable. This technique allows us to simplify the equation significantly. To solve this equation, we'll factor out the common term x squared, which will transform our equation into a much simpler form that we can easily solve for the values of x that make the equation true. This type of problem demonstrates an important algebra skill, recognizing common factors and using them to simplify equations. Let's move on to see how we can apply this approach. Let's solve this quadratic equation by looking at the terms. We have x squared minus 9x squared equals 0. Notice we have the same variable with the same exponent on both terms, which means we can combine them. Remember that when we don't see a coefficient in front of a variable, there's an implied coefficient of 1. So the first term is actually 1 times x squared. Let's write this out to make our work clearer. Since both terms have the same variable x squared, we can factor out x squared and group the coefficients together. This is similar to how we would combine like terms in an expression. We get 1 minus 9 in parentheses multiplied by x squared equals 0. Now we can simplify the expression inside the parentheses. 1 minus 9 equals negative 8. So our equation becomes negative 8 times x squared equals 0. So we've successfully combined like terms in our original equation. The simplified form, negative 8x squared equals 0, is much cleaner. In algebra, this kind of simplification is an important first step before solving for the variable. To find the value of x, we would divide both sides by negative 8x, giving us x equals 0 as our only solution, since any number multiplied by 0 gives 0. Here we have the equation negative 8x squared equals 0. To solve this equation, we need to isolate x squared on one side. We can divide both sides of the equation by negative 8, which I've highlighted in red. This is a key algebraic technique.